Hey guys, what's up? This is Murilo from Guitarload. We are one of the main guitar specialized media in Latin America, and today we have the honor to receive one of the most amazing guitarists from our time. And if you never got shivers while listening to his legato technique, you're certainly dead inside and maybe outside. So guys, please welcome Mr. Tom Quayle.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Great to see you.
It's nice to have you here talking with us.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I don't see a better way to start our interview than talking about your technique, your legato technique.
Yeah.
Tom, could you talk a little bit about the process of construction your legato technique?
Yeah.
What was your influence for this? Why legato? Why spend so many times playing legato? Can you talk a little bit about it?
Yeah, so when I first started playing, I did everything. I was like, I learned typical shredder kind of stuff. So I was into picking, I was into sweep picking, I was into tapping, all of those techniques. Then I went to jazz school and I discovered that I had a big problem with my right hand in that I can only cross strings with an upstroke. So this means that from an improvisational perspective, it's a big problem because I never know when I'm improvising whether I'm going to cross strings with an up or a downstroke. And when I discovered legato again, because obviously I knew what legato was, but a student of mine, after I graduated from jazz degree, introduced me again to Greg Howe, Brett Garsed, Alan Holdsworth, obviously. He brought a load of albums around. And I was like, let's have a go at this again. Let's try this technique out and see if it works. Because I'd heard a bunch of guys in the jazz world who were playing that way or more legato and thought, that sound appeals to me. So around 2006, I started playing more legato and I just found I could express myself much better with it. And it got round this issue of picking, basically. So that's how it happened. And then I practiced in a much more mature way because I was older. I was like probably 26 years old when I first started doing this really seriously, the legato side of things. I'd been playing 11 years at this point, so I knew how to practice in a more mature way.
Learning everything again.
Sort of, yeah, because basically I'd got all this jazz vocabulary and I was playing in a kind of Pat Metheny-esque kind of way where you're picking a lot and doing some legato. And then this transition over to doing mostly left-hand playing really worked. And then I incorporated the hybrid picking as well, so I use the middle finger on the right hand, I don't use the other two. And slowly this vocabulary started to appear. And I found I could, express myself and move around the guitar more freely. And I think if you find something technically on the instrument that works for you, you shouldn't resist it, because this idea that you have to be amazing at everything, which is a very modern guitar approach. We've got guys like Guthrie, for example, Guthrie Govan, who can do everything. So we feel we have to do everything as well. And it's not the case. If you find a way of expressing yourself, think about all the great guitar players we know. Most of them, they focus on a particular technique, and that kind of helps to define their vocabulary and their sound. And I guess that's what happened with me. The legato thing was kind of defining my sound in a way.
Talking about your technique, I noticed that you use a lot of hybrid picking.
Yeah.
Is there any special motivation for this hybrid picking?
Yeah, a lot of this stuff was sort of latently sat in the back of my mind from when I was younger. So when I was maybe 16, I learned a solo from Australian guitar player Brett Garsed. That's from, I think the album was called Quid Pro Quo. And it was him and a guy called CJ Helmerich, who's one of these crazy 8-finger, all over the fretboard guys. And Brett was using hybrid picking for the solo, and it was transcribed in Guitar Techniques magazine. Do you guys know that magazine?
Yeah.
Really famous magazine, obviously. And there was loads of hybrid picking in there. And I think it just stuck in my mind. And because of my picking issues, I don't like big movements on the guitar. Okay. So when I play, a lot of this, the movements are very small, and the hybrid picking means that I don't have to do large movements with the right hand. I can keep things very static. Nice. And that's how that helps. A lot of this stuff though was developed subconsciously, just by exploring legato technique and trying not to move the right hand too much. Nice. So it kind of seeps into the playing automatically. There's not too much conscious thought behind it.
And I think one of the things that most calm my heart when I listen to your playing is the way you see the patterns of your scales. Mm-hmm. Could you tell me a little bit more about your patterns?
Yeah, so
this is a kind of a particular class right here.
Yeah.
And I love this patterns of this guy.
Yeah, so the first thing I should say is, for anybody out there who doesn't know this, I tune the guitar slightly differently.
Yeah.
I won't go too deep into this, but so I have the same as standard tuning on the lowest 4 strings, so E, A, D, and G. but the top two strings, as we call them, B and E, are tuned up a semitone.
This is to try to maintain some kind of symmetry.
Yeah, so 6-string bass players have been doing this forever. They know the lowdown on this, basically. But effectively it means any given chord shape is the same on any string set. So if it works for chords, it works for arpeggios, and it works for scales. Now that actually led me to start to recognize these very small shapes that are the same all over the fretboard. You can do this in standard tuning too. With normal guitar learning, if you like, pedagogy, you tend to learn very large shapes across all 6 strings or 5 strings. And what I found personally is they were very hard to manipulate through chord changes because the harmony's moving by so fast and you're like, oh man, which shape am I supposed to be playing? And by the time you've thought about it, it's already, the chord's gone and you're on to the next chord. Yeah. So when I think about the guitar, I find the root note of the chord that I'm playing over, or the scale I'm utilizing, somewhere on the fretboard. And then I visualize the smallest possible way of thinking about all the notes in the scale or the chord. So I can see the 5, I can see the 3, I can see the 7. Or from this root note, I can see the 3 coming down, or the 4, up to the 5, up to the 3. And I've learnt what all of these shapes look like within 1 octave, ascending and descending from the root notes. Nice. And that means that because I know what all those intervals look like, I just need to know what intervals are in the scale, and then I can immediately, from any root note, see those relevant notes anywhere on the fretboard.
And this helps to have a kind of economic kind
Absolutely.
of thought.
And you end up playing in a very sort of precise way, a very conscious way, which is not always a good thing. Sometimes you should shut off and just play. But when you're playing over chord changes, you've got to think about the harmony, and this is quite a complex instrument to visualize, unlike the piano where you know everything is the same in every octave. So when you're playing over chord changes, you can very quickly outline like those lines, they're all informed by where's the root note, where's the interval I'm looking for, within 1 octave visually, and then you start to be able to hear it as well. It starts to form into this kind of oral thing as well as a visual thing. Nice. Obviously you don't just want it to be visual, so it all starts to come together. So yeah, it's a process, but it's more efficient than learning all of these 6-string shapes, 7 different positions, 5 different positions, you know. All that. Cool.
About your style, we in the crowd can notice in your face, in your body, in your hand, that you're always soft and calm and no tension while you're making the crowd hating you do your phrasing. Cool. So how do you prepare yourself for no tension, calm, while you're playing a so high performance technique?
So I practice improvising the same way I practice technique. Nice. So when you practice technique, you practice everything really slowly. And because you're practicing slowly, you build in the relaxation. If you practice fast, you can get tension built in. This is what I was talking about before with the legato technique. The reason I have a problem with picking is because I practiced too fast, too much tension, too quickly when I was younger, without any kind of maturity about the practice. So I developed very bad physical habits. So when I play live, like I'm going to try and demonstrate some of this stuff tonight, if I demonstrate the picking, maybe 60% of the time it works, 40% of the time it doesn't. Okay. That ratio is not good enough. That doesn't work out. Yeah. So with the legato side of things, I've practiced so slowly and so precisely, making all the movements as precise and consistent as possible, that I can guarantee a sort of minimum level of technique that's good enough. Yeah. I would like it to be better every time, but it's good enough for a performance or whatever. And I've done the same thing with improvisation. I've practiced improvising, keeping everything about the technique identical to if I was playing much faster or more subdivisions, you know, higher subdivisions. And that means that not only you develop the technique to a high level, but you also develop the ability to think quickly. Nice. And to be relaxed in your thought process, to not stress when you're playing. And that mental state is really, really important, because in a situation like this, when you're not at home on your own, playing to a backing track or whatever, the mental stress is the thing that's going to get you, because you'll start forgetting the chord changes, you'll start thinking about, you know, oh, that note I just played sounded terrible, you know, so you've got to get over that side of things. And that takes very slow, disciplined practice.
Nice, nice. And do you have some rituals before go up to stage, like, you know, just go up and rock out?
Quite a simple guy in many ways. I try not to get too stressed out. I try not to overthink. I find if I try and... The rituals to me stress me out. I've tried it before. I used to do the Bill Evans thing. Bill Evans, the piano player. I used to dip my hands in a hot basin of warm water beforehand, because apparently that was a great thing to do. It would warm up your hands. And just, the thing is, if you've got that ritual and for some reason you can't do it, you stress, you get more stressed. So I just try.
It's like you think too much in this process of prepare yourself that you get stressed.
Yeah.
You don't have fun.
So the
or
thing
relax.
that's supposed to relax you is actually stressing you out. So I just don't think too much. I don't think too hard about it, and just try and have a good time, basically. Nice. Simple as that.
And talking about the way that brought you to jazz fusion, we know that the most part of the guitar players starts playing rock or metal. A long time before, after they start playing, they meet jazz, they meet fusion.
Yeah.
And how is going for you? Why jazz? Why fusion?
I think for a lot of guitar players and musicians generally, guitar players particularly, I should say, we're very attracted to technique. Very attracted to learning scales, knowledge, information.
Nice.
So I started out in the shred world when I was 15, 16, and very quickly you get a lot of technique down, or some people, you know, get a lot of technique down. And then the next thing that really grabs you is harmony, because it's the next thing that you can get lots of information from, and you can absorb that information. It's like, oh man, now I know what the melodic minor scale is. Now I know all the modes of the melodic minor scale. This is stuff that you get your teeth into.
The most part of rock and metal, we have, unfortunately, a poor kind of harmony.
Well, I mean, it's perfect for what it is.
Yeah.
But it's not a wide palette. Often, it's not a wide palette.
There's a step after this.
And then you get into the jazz side of things, and suddenly this palette of harmony opens up, and there's all this new information to learn, and it's exciting. And you know, when learning's exciting, you get obsessed with it, and that you can see forward progress. So that really, it's like we have this phrase, it got its hooks in me and dragged me in.
Nice.
And it was all the usual guys, Scott Henderson, Frank Gambale, that crossover kind of guys between the shred world and the fusion world, and then you just go into all of the jazz and everything, you know, it just goes crazy.
Nice. Talk about your tone.
Okay.
What did you bring to your tour here in Latin America? What do we have here?
Very simple setup. You know, my main pedal board is enormous, so I try not to travel with it. It's very simple. Basically, there's a compressor at the beginning of the chain, which is sometimes on and sometimes off.
Yeah.
The reason I bring it with me is because if I'm having a day, I have ulnar nerve compression, and if I'm having a day where it gives me issues with strength in these two fingers, if it's a bad day, it gets turned on. If it's a good day, it gets turned off, and it's just a comfort thing. Yeah. It does push the front of the dual fusion that I've got here slightly. So the dual fusion, if I talk about that, is a pedal. This has been out since about 2013. It's my signature overdrive with Wampler. This says Proto on it for prototype. The reason is the main one is on my big board, and it's so like nailed down on that thing that it's never coming off.
But are there much difference?
Exactly the same. Yeah, the switches move in slightly different ways, but I use channel 1 mostly. And this basically, Brian Wampler designed it as, he has a pedal called the Euphoria and a pedal called the Paisley Drive, which is Brad Paisley's pedal. And I was stacking them together. So basically it's a Euphoria and a Paisley Drive, and the low end has been shaped so they stack together slightly better. Nice. And what I've actually found is these days I'm basically using channel 1 almost exclusively. And it's really amp-like, very, if I just turn this off. And if you roll the volume down,
have a cool range of dynamic. Nice.
And it's thick and it's great for legato. It's got this mid-range that's really nice for legato. So that's basically where the drive comes from. The octave pedal is there if I wanted to demonstrate something with a little bit more low end. That's the only reason that's there, and I love it because it's got the thing where it figures out what the lowest note you're playing. It drops only the lowest note, so that's really useful. Nice. And then the Wampler Metaverse, which is their kind of do everything delay pedal. And I'm using the digital delay because although everybody went crazy for a while for tape delays, bucket brigade delays, I like an 80s style digital delay with the high end rolled off. Nice and simple, no modulation, and this thing does it great. It's small, compact, easy to power, and then a polytune. That's it, basically. And I generally just use the volume control of the guitar, you know, for cleans, and that's it. I don't really do anything else. I never turn the dual fusion off. It's just all volume control.
Nice. And do you construct your tone to serve your technique? I mean, you can play your same legato technique in other kind of setup, or your setup serves to your technique? Yeah,
so the idea with the technique is even if the amp is clean, it should still. And you can see there's no compressor on, nothing is there. So the tone really is serving the sound I have in my head for how I think a guitar should sound. That's a really obvious thing to say. But this whole thick with sustain, quite vocal-like. Some people say it's like fluty, if that's even a description, you know, or like a violin almost.
Nice.
So that when you do these kind of, it's got this vocal quality, and the sustain is good. If I want to dig in and do some pinched harmonics, so there's some expression in there, but it's easy to play. I don't want to make my life difficult.
Nice.
So yeah, it's very simple.
So smart way to think.
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Nice. And this is your Ivan's signature model.
Yeah, this is the.
Talk a little bit more about this guitar. Sure. What is the innovations that we have in this?
Yeah. So this is the second guitar we've released. This is based on their AZS. AZ stands for like literally the letters A to Z, and the idea is that these guitars cover a huge wide range of styles. Now obviously this one is more like a T-style guitar, slightly more limited in terms of its tonal palette because of that reason. But essentially what we've got here is, as I say, a T-style guitar but with sort of super strat additions, so like an all-access neck joint, roasted maple neck, matte finish on here so it's super smooth. Very unlike a traditional Ibanez neck. If you think about the wizard necks from the RGs, I can't play those anymore. I love them. Like, takes me back to being 15, but I can't play them. This is a C-shaped profile. It's a lot thicker than people would normally associate with Ibanez. Locking tuners, vintage style locking tuners, so they lock from the front, but they don't have a load of mass that drops the headstock down. Bone nut rosewood fretboards, big jumbo stainless steel frets, so modern style frets, because that's really nice. It means I can have the action higher, which I prefer. And then hardware-wise, Seymour Duncan, this is the same mini humbucker that's in the George Benson guitar, which basically means that this is a great jazz guitar as well. The clean tone is very warm and fat. And then this is a slightly hot kind of single coil, again Seymour Duncan. I forget the magnet that's in here. I'm not a massive specs guy, but it's a beautiful sound, and you can hear how thick, super thick sound, cleans up really nicely.
And you don't have that kind of noise that a single coil used to.
Depends on the venue actually, but yeah, in here it's good today.
Here in Brazil, did you have this trouble with?
Yeah, a little bit last night, yeah. It does happen. If you flick the switch up here, it tends to get rid of the noise because it's combining these two. So this coil here, you'll hear, it gets a little bit, you hear the low end fatten out, and it also gives you hum cancelling, which is great. So that's really, really useful. And then a three-way switch, and then a Goto. This is it's basically a variation of the Goto 510, which you'll find in a lot of boutique guitars. Slightly closer string spacing.
Is there any special reason for the?
Just because hybrid picking, a lot of the modern techniques that guitar players use are slightly better served by closer string spacing.
Nice.
So that the hand, and I've got small hands as well. I just do. There's nothing I can do about it, unfortunately. So it helps with that as well. And that's, yeah, I mean, that's about it. It's very unique within the range. They've got these beautiful scratch plates and this stunning Celeste blue. This took a while to get together, but yeah, and in this guitar, the bridge is not recessed. On the TQM1, the original guitar, it was recessed. So you've got the option to have it floating and have more kind of variation in terms of what you can do with the whammy bar. In my case, for this, right now, it's locked down just for stability, and it gives a bit more sustain as well. So yeah, it's an awesome, awesome guitar. Really, really solid, never goes out of tune, you know, it's just fantastic.
Fantastic.
So, very happy indeed. Yeah.
You posted on your social media that you were having a break to get some rest, to take care of your mental healthness. Could you talk a little bit about this process? How was that experience for you? You stopped everything, or you just stopped from the social media?
Yeah, so I was having problems with my hands at the time as well. I mentioned earlier about ulnar nerve compression. I have some muscle and nerve compression here as well. And I was finding playing harder than I'd ever found it before. I had a big period in my life before my daughter was born where I could literally pick up a guitar and go. No warm-up required, nothing. And I was picking the guitar up and it's just feeling very difficult to play. And because I'm not used to that process, and I had less time available to me because my daughter was born, so on and so forth, I wasn't enjoying playing guitar for the first time in my entire life. It felt like pressure, and it felt like all I was doing was maintenance on the instrument, and even that was difficult. So that combined with the pressure of social media where you have to just constantly upload, you know, and it has to be perfect every single time, and you're doom scrolling, as they call it, through just insane guitar players constantly. Yeah. Whether it's real or not, it doesn't matter, because it just, as far as you're concerned, you're seeing it and it's hard to deal with. So I didn't play for about 6 months properly. Like, I picked the guitar up once in a while. I'm very, very, very lucky because the vast majority of my income is passive. Selling courses online, I've got an app that I sell, so on and so forth. So I could take a break. And I'm a big believer in, you have to just wait for it to feel good again. If you force it, and I'm lucky enough, as I say, to not have to force it, it's going to get worse. And I don't want to be in the position where I start thinking, I don't want to do this, I want to do something else, you know. I can't do anything else. There'd be nothing else I could do. So yeah, that break really, really helped. And you know, this started to improve a little bit. It's not fixed, but it's improved, and I'm enjoying playing again. I'm enjoying the sound of the guitar. And in that period, what I actually did is I bought a load of analog synths and just got into sound design and, you know, did a load of stuff with the synths and understood how synthesis worked and spent some money on gear that wasn't related to guitar, as we do, you know. So that was really nice, did some gaming, so on and so forth. And just, you need a break every now and again. You see this with guitar players, like Steve Morse, great example, went and became an airline pilot for a while. A break is good every now and again. And if you're not feeling like it, and you do have the ability to take a bit of a break, even if it's just a couple of weeks, you should do it. Don't force yourself through these mental barriers, because I think you'll do more harm than good in the long run. It's just difficult, because musicians, you know, you've got to keep working, and you've got to keep the social media grind going. However, what's interesting for me is I've not done as much social media recently. I've done the odd bit here and there, and it feels good to not be constantly doing that. And I don't think it's as big a deal as people think it is. I think you can take a break and go back to it later on, and it's okay, you know.
Nice. I would like to ask you to say for our followers some tip for the guitarist that is passing through this hard time as you passed before.
Sure. Yeah. Do you want me to say to the camera or to you? Or?
Okay.
Yeah.
You can say to the camera.
I think it's really, really, really important, and I've learned some of this the hard way, to not be too hard on yourself. Don't do the thing where you compare yourself to every other guitar player on the planet, because there are going to be a whole bunch of guys out there who are better than you, better than me. You know, there's always somebody who's at a higher level, and if you're constantly comparing yourself to everybody else, it's like a recipe for mental disaster, basically. You're unique, some of your influences are unique, some of what you've practiced, and that's a good thing. Strive to improve, but don't stress yourself out about it too much. A good friend of mine, a guy called John Wheatcroft from the UK, amazing guitar player, has this phrase where he says, there's a reason it's called playing music. It's supposed to be fun. It's not supposed to be super stressful. So, You know, don't be too hard on yourself. It's okay to not be the best at everything.
Perfect, perfect. Going to the last part of our interview, do you recommend any new musicians you are listening to, or a new guitarist you find amazing? Do you recommend someone?
I do, and because you've just asked me, we'll have to cut this out just a little bit out. I can't remember his name, and I really want to get it right. I don't know where my phone is. Oh, it's not there. Shit. I don't want to get his name wrong. Unless I can think of someone else. There's this one guy, this legato. Okay, let me say someone else. Yeah, so a guy I would massively recommend, if people don't know him, and I know some people will, is Tim Miller.
Tim Miller.
You know Tim?
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
This is
incredible
amazing.
musician.
Amazing. He's amazing.
And Tim has a great tuition website as well. So if you're getting into the jazz fusion thing, check out Tim. He will blow your mind.
Nice. How is your vision about the next step for guitarists, the future of guitar, the great tendencies you are seeing for the future?
The modern guitar scene is truly insane. So many incredible players. You know, you just see all styles. Just this level is just insane. The only thing I fear for some of these guitar players is that I think they feel that they have to be perfect all the time. You see this we talked about it earlier, this doom scrolling Instagram thing, this level of perfection that must be attained. And I think the guitar scene generally needs to chill out just a little bit about this perfectionism and this perfect level of technique all the time. If we can all move past this level of like worrying about perfectionism and just, back in the day, I'm sounding old now, used to just shoot with one of those white clamshell MacBooks with a 480p webcam, no great sound quality, and people just enjoyed the playing. Now everything has to be produced to within an inch of its life with like multicam, 4K, HDR, everything going crazy, amazing sound, ridiculous production. It doesn't always have to be that way. So I hope that young guitar players don't feel too much pressure to always be that perfect, you know. But the level now is insane, absolutely amazing.
What will we have for the next year from you? Are you preparing new songs or new lessons?
Yes. So for the first time ever this year, in January, I'm exhibiting at NAMM because we have this app Solo, which I released during the pandemic actually, 2021, was it 21 or 20? I can't remember. It came out, it's done incredibly well. It's all about fretboard visualization for guitar players, bass players, and for other musicians as well. It works with horns, singers, you know, piano players if they want to. We're releasing version 2. It's been an insane amount of work, and we've shot a bunch of course material that we're going to talk about. I can't tell you too much about it yet, I'm not allowed, but we're going to talk about it more coming up to NAMM and release a whole bunch of material. And I am working on my own music. I've been working on it for a very long time. Some of it's going to get played tonight.
Nice.
But yeah, it's just I'm not a natural writer, I'm an improviser, so it's not a process that comes easily to me. And I am a little bit of a perfectionist, so I need to lose some of that. A little bit what we talked about before. I should take my own advice, basically. So yeah.